Okay, so this is a very simple 2D game made in Unreal Engine 5. It features a controllable character that can move around the screen using the W, A, S, and D keys. Enemies will spawn in at the edges of the screen and attempt to collide with the player. If the enemy hits the player dies, and the game restarts. The score at the top goes higher the longer the player survives and will reset to 0 when they die. So there are 5 blueprints in use. One for the player, one for the enemy, one for the enemy spawner, one for the UI widget that displays a score, and finally the game mode blueprint. And the game was created in C++ rather than being visually scripted. There are several timers in use throughout the game. So there's a timer for spawning the enemies, there's a timer for resetting the game after the player dies, and there's also a timer for starting a new game. These timers are used to make the game feel a bit nicer because after the player dies, I didn't want it to restart immediately. I wanted it to be a pause, and then the player reappears again. And the same with the enemy spawning. I wanted there to be a slight pause at the start of the game before the enemy spawned in. The input from the keyboard is accessed using input actions and an input action map that binds the relevant keys to functions in the player character, like this move trigger one here and move completed. So when movement is triggered, the relevant keys are the value that they produce is read and passed into the player class so that the player starts moving around. The enemies are spawned at the size of the screen, and they're given a direction. They're given the player's initial position upon spawning, so that they will immediately start to move towards the player. And finally, the collision mechanic uses overlap begin. It checks that the other object is an enemy, and then it checks if the player is alive before triggering the player died delegate, which resets the game. The player is set to the visibility is set to false, so they disappear from the screen. The score resets, and then the game starts again. And that is pretty much it. Thank you very much for watching.